All right. Good morning, everybody. Just give me a thumbs up. Let me know you can hear me okay. Thank you, Samir. Appreciate it. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. Can all join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And keeping the palms joined. And putting the palms down. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Intro to Buddhism and Meditation. Thanks for being here. I always like to start with a question just to give some time for people to settle in before meditation and join us, as well as an opportunity for people to communicate with each other. And it just popped into my head as I was doing the offering, but every so often I like to just kind of explain from my perspective, my practice, what the triple gem actually means and what it means to take refuge. So I'm just pondering if I want to ask a question first and then talk, or just talk, but I'll ask the question first. My question is, when we join palms and take refuge, in reciting the triple gem, my question is, do you join palms, and do you recite the triple gem? Now, obviously, it's a bit of a personal question, so I know some may be more, a little more comfortable than others in sharing. But as usual, I'll just open it up for anyone who wants to share. Do you join palms and take refuge and recite the triple gem as I'm doing it? And obviously, this is not a well, if you don't do it, you are going to get kicked off the Zoom meeting. I just want to take a little bit of time and maybe explain it, and so it helps me just to understand where people are at with it. So I'll type the question in for those to see. Do you join palms when we begin? And do you recite the triple gem? Do you join palms when we begin, and do you recite the triple gem? With as little or as much as you'd like, or no, or maybe, or sometimes, or I don't know what you're talking about. All of the above are okay. That's why I'll take a little bit of time and explain it. But yeah, I think I'll just talk as people are typing here. But I think it's important to understand that not so much whether you do it or not. That's not really the important part to me, and that's not even why I bring it up. But the triple gem of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, often referred to as the three jewels, to me are a very important part of this practice. And So when we think of taking refuge in the Buddha, again, really for those who are maybe brand new to Buddhism, it's not about finding refuge in someone else, right? So if you take refuge in the Buddha, you're not putting your faith in the Buddha's hands. The Buddha died 2,500 years ago, so he can't help you right now. When you take refuge in the Buddha, what you're taking refuge in is what's called Bodhichitta, or Buddha nature. And refuge, first word to explore, which we won't do in depth now, but safety, comfort, protection, whatever that word means to you. The first one is, do you find refuge in Bodhichitta, Buddha nature? And that, to me, means the understanding that the Buddha himself was human, no different than we are. And the Buddha awakened, figured out how to end his suffering, and so can we. So, I've heard over the years a lot of people say, well, it must have been much easier at the time of the Buddha. And that's really not the case. The things that the Buddha had access to as a prince maybe were different than the things we have access to. But whatever all the money in the world could buy, that's what he had. Whatever all the jewels could buy, that's what he had. Whatever all the women could provide for him, that's what he had. He had everything. As I always say, all the wealth, all the riches, all the women, anything he wanted at his disposal, he had it. He was a prince. And so he left that world. So and someone brought this up recently, which is why I want to talk about it, is that to think that it was easier back then and it's more challenging now because we have like iPhones or things like that. Whatever was comparable back then, he had and more. So important to understand that if he could walk away from his attachments, his cravings, his desires, if he could find a simple way of life where he had peace and harmony within himself, then so can we. So his cravings, his desires, his attachments, his way of life was in most ways probably much more extravagant than all of ours. And he was just a simple human. So I find great comfort and joy in knowing that somebody who had probably deeper cravings, attachments, and desires than I have, if he could move away from it, then so can I. And that's what I take refuge in. That's what I find safety, comfort, protection in, is knowing that it's possible to remove that is very liberating. And that's, to me, a lot of what inspires practice. The second one is the Dharma. You take refuge in the Dharma. What is the Dharma? The Dharma, in this sense, really is the teachings. So what did he say? Right? He spent 45 years teaching. So what exactly did he teach? And that's where we get into the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, the fundamental core Buddhist teachings of loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, right? Learning to practice the six paramitas of generosity and morality and patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. Do we practice these things? And when we find safety, comfort, protection in the teachings of the Buddha, what it reminds us is that if we put these practices into our lives will be happier. We will be kinder, gentler, happier people. That's what the practice is. So again, similar to like taking refuge in the Buddha or Bodhichitta, Buddha nature, is to recognize that if we put the Dharma into our lives, then it can really protect us and keep us safe, right? If you don't know how to swim, you probably wouldn't jump into a pool. If you went into a body of water, you would have a raft or cool little floaty arm things to put on, like the kids have. To me, that's what the Dharma is. The Dharma is an opportunity to protect us from things that would cause us harm. So that's the Dharma. And the third one is the Sangha. Do we find safety, comfort, protection in the Sangha, in the community, in the group of people that we practice with? The time of the Buddha, the Sangha was the monks and the nuns and the disciples. And so in a modern day, really our Sangha is the group of people that we gather with in a meditation Buddhist setting. So do we find comfort, safety, protection in that Sangha that we sit with? Do we care for them as they do care for us? Do we protect them as they provide protection for us? This to me, and often in at least many teachings I receive, the Sangha is the most important, because if you don't find care and love and protection, if you don't take care of the community that you practice with, then the community falls apart, and therefore the access to the Dharma decreases. And as the access to the Dharma decreases, then so does the idea of taking refuge in anything. So taking refuge in that Sangha and in that community is incredibly important. All three, I would say, equally important, no one more important than the other. I've just found as a practitioner that taking care of the Sangha is, for me, my greatest practice, and maybe selfishly brings me the greatest joy. So knowing that there's however many people here right now, and I can share the Dharma with you that might help you find some comfort. That to me is taking care of the Sangha. So I find that a beautiful practice. So, all right, I'll look quickly here, just some comments. Yes. A gentle reminder to center myself and be present. Yes. I do. It helps me ground into the practice. Also, maybe it's years of church as a kid that has me conditioned to repeat phrases, but it helps for sure. Yes, I do. Yes, and yes. For me, it reminds me of the truth of the Dharma and the comfort I find in it. Comfort and wisdom. Sometimes, yes. Join palms. I do, but I only say the triple gem the first time. The other two times I say in my mind, may all beings be free of suffering on all levels of existence. Is this incorrect? There's nothing that's incorrect. There's just teachings. So whatever resonates with you is great. Typically, yes, thanks for your explanation on it. You are welcome. So hopefully that just shed some light on the triple gem. For me, I found it as a practice that I do multiple times throughout the day, really like as an anchor coming back to just as things get hectic and get crazy, just close my eyes, join palms, and just recite the triple gem, often out loud, often to myself, just depends on what the setting is. Sometimes I'll just close my eyes and recite it in my head, just as like a reminder to anchor back to the practice. So, all right. So with that, we'll go ahead and sit. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You won't float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. You won't figure anything out whatsoever. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Am I doing it right or doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, outside, wherever you are. This is life. The practice is learning to be quiet and still within all the chaos. So posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open, mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, we'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. And breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where is your mind? Lost in thought? Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment. Just sitting. Breathing. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe, knowing with each breath there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's calm, quiet, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with, it's not from anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands across the legs. It's not from sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And coming back to the triple gem, that's what this practice is. It's understanding how you feel now. It's looking at what is Bodhichitta, what is Dharma, what is Sangha, how does it play out in your lives? And understanding that that feeling you have most likely right now, quiet, calm, settled, slow, the triple gem is the reason for most of that. Without exploring your own bodhicitta, your own Buddha nature, you wouldn't be sitting here right now. Without there being the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, you would not be sitting here right now. And without the Sangha, the community, you would not be sitting here right now. So whether we recite it out loud and join palms is not the important part. The important part is that this experience exists because of the triple gem. You can't separate it. For me as a practitioner, I've learned to really embrace and open my mind to realize that my entire experience is through the triple gem, which is why I take refuge in it. Everything I do day in and day out, moment to moment to moment, is with the triple gem in mind. That's what feeds my practice. That's what feeds my life. That's what feeds what I think, what I say, and what I do, is because of the triple gem. So, yes, often we recite things and they just become kind of habit and they don't maybe have feeling or meaning to them anymore. But my suggestion and recommendation is every time you do take refuge to actually really embrace and embody what that means. Without it, we are not sitting here right now. And so it's incredibly important. If you've been at this practice for a while, if you've been at this practice for a month or whatever it is, just begin to recognize how much this path and this practice has impacted your life. And without the triple gem, this doesn't exist. So with that, I'll pause. To those who are new, welcome. If you are joining us for the first time, then hopefully you've had a decent overview of the Triple Gem and how it plays out in your life, or can play out in your life. So I'd like to just open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. I prefer to address what's on your mind and go from there. So you'll see a chat box somewhere on your screen there. Feel free to type in whatever you'd like, and I'll use the rest of our time this morning or afternoon, wherever you are, for that. Tom, how do I accept things as they are without becoming complacent? Is moving for change more a matter of accepting outcomes as opposed to not actually doing anything? So, I think first, to look at the word accept, and semantics and different words have different meanings to each of us, and I definitely understand that, and knowing you, I understand the concept of your question, so bear with me here for a minute. I just want to hopefully shed some light on some things around the word accept things as they are without becoming complacent. So often when we say accept things as they are, it means that we don't like it, but we're going to learn to be okay with it. And in a very conventional sense, I understand that, and that makes perfect sense. And we do this constantly in our lives, and we will always do this constantly in our lives. But for me, I find it helpful when I'm looking at a situation that I'm trying to convince myself that I have to accept. Because what that really means is I think it's wrong, but I'm going to deal with it. And yes, we all do that. I get it. But what I'm getting at is, instead of trying to accept things as they are, just see things as they are. When we see things truly for how they are, without any judgment, without any label, without any expectation, because if we look at something and we don't judge it, we don't label it, we don't have an expectation of it, then we're not put into a position of having to accept it, because it is how it is. The sun will rise and fall whether we accept it or not. It's just what's happening. We could like it or dislike it, accept it or not accept it, but it doesn't change. It's what's happening. Now, again, coming back to the very kind of conventional reality question of then how do we accept things as they are without becoming complacent? And this really ties into the second part of your question, which is recognizing things, situations, people in life that we want to change. So you've heard me reference him before, but I think that Thich Nhat Hanh is a perfect example of someone who the phrase engaged Buddhism really came from him and his work. He may have even created that phrase, I don't know. But Buddhist practice is not about being complacent and just kicking back and doing nothing. It is very engaged. It's engaged in community, engaged in society, engaged in social justice issues, engaged in recognizing change within ourselves. So it would have been very easy for me to just say, well, you know what, I'm going to accept, say when I was younger, that I'm an angry, mean person. That would be easy. But I have to work to change that. So there is no complacency, because once I recognize that that's not how I want to be, then I have to work incredibly hard, very diligent at changing that. And then again, trying to tie it into your second question, is moving for change more a matter of accepting outcomes as opposed to not actually doing anything? I think when we move towards creating change in our life or the lives around us, it's not about looking at the outcome at all. It's about the effort of what we're doing, right? If I'm attached to the outcome, then I'm too focused on the end result. What I look at is, what is my effort in working to change something? Again, it's not expecting anything to come from it. It's just knowing that each day you put one foot in front of the other, one breath in, one breath out. And we become very mindful of what we think and what we say and what we do, because those actions, that karma, is what impacts everything around us. And again, I keep coming back to the accepting outcomes, accepting things as they are. But I think if maybe you begin, and this, like all things, are easier in a dialogue versus me reading a paragraph and then rambling. But I think if you begin to shift, like I started saying, this idea of accepting things, when that view changes and we just see things. I saw something the other day, and I don't know if this will make sense, but it was just a really interesting way of expressing something that we all know too well, that I thought was really a beautiful expression of this idea. And it was something to the effect of, and it's resonated in my head the last couple of days, and I haven't shared it yet, and I'm not even sure how to express it, but it was talking about how when we look at ourselves, and if you're someone who's not confident or comfortable with the way you look, when you look at yourself, you're not actually seeing yourself. What you're seeing is in comparison to everyone else. And therefore, you form this opinion and idea that you don't like the way you look. Or if you have great confidence in the way you look, in your appearance, that it could be the same thing, that you're looking at yourself, but you're not actually seeing yourself. You're seeing yourself in comparison to everybody else. And you're thinking, I look better than everyone else. So when you actually look in the mirror and see yourself, can you just see you, but not comparing it to someone else? I find these things very similar. So just some thoughts, if that's helpful, hopefully. If not, ask me again on Tuesday. All right, Molly, is there a place for hallucinogens in Buddhism? No, that's an easy one. I know the precepts say to avoid mind-altering substances, but I also know some cultures use hallucinogens to deepen spiritual practice and drop ego. Yeah, I mean, some cultures do lots of things, you know. Some cultures think it's okay to abuse people. You know, so anytime that these questions come up, and this is around the precepts, and this is something that twice a year I give the teachings of the precepts to a group of, 20 to 50 college kids. And the precepts are to refrain from lying, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and intoxicants, or anything that alters a state of mind. So imagine giving this talk to, 50, 20-year-olds, when, no offense to 20-year-olds, but in college, a majority of their life at that stage is lying, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and intoxicants. That consumes the culture on a lot of college campuses, unfortunately, which is actually why we started a college group, to try to change some of that. But so when I'm working with college kids, the same thing comes up where, they say, well, I got really high, or I took a bunch of acid and had this crazy outer body experience, and dropped my ego. You didn't. Because it would only be your ego saying that you dropped your ego, right? Ultimately, the Buddhist teachings say there is no self, that in itself is an illusion. So when you look at a question like this, to me, I look at very core fundamental teachings of the Buddha that says the self is an illusion, right? There is no self to drop. There is no ego to drop. These are all things that we create. But we get all tripped out on things and we start thinking that we've dropped some sort of self or sort of ego. When in reality, we've probably just moved further away from things as they are. All right. There's a really funny story about a Tibetan Lama in the 60s, I believe it was. Some of you have either heard me tell the story or maybe you've read it or familiar with it. And so this Tibetan Lama was hanging out with like Ram Dass, I think, or whoever it was. And they were at some festival thing and everyone was doing acid. And so the Lama said, well, I want to try it. And apparently he took way too many tabs of acid, right? Supposed to take one, maybe two, whatever. And I guess he took a lot. An hour later, he just said, okay, now what? That his mind was already so far away from this conventional reality we're all stuck in, that the drugs didn't do anything for him. So from someone who's done just about everything out there, I'm not coming from this, purist place. I smoked and drank all through high school. I've done, like I said, just about everything out there. So I'm coming from that place, that learning to be kind and compassionate and generous and understanding doesn't come from losing our mind with intoxicants. And as the great Zen teachers will tell you, that the magic is right here. This is it. I mean, how much deeper of a spiritual practice do you need than to recognize that here we are sitting at our homes or wherever you are, we're staring at these ridiculous little machines hooked up with these ridiculous little cameras with a bunch of words and names on the side and all this stuff in front of us. And here we are communicating. I mean, that's it. That's the magic. There is nothing, there's no deeper spiritual practice than the present moment. Because that's what's actually happening. So I'm definitely not again, the answer to the question very directly, is there a place for hallucinogens in Buddhism, is no. Right? Now, that doesn't mean that you can't be into Buddhism and meditate and read Buddhist stuff and, do a bunch of drugs. You can do whatever you want. But you have to look at, what did the Buddha say? And the Buddha said, anything that alters the state of mind will keep you from awakening. So, and the other thing is, you go on some huge drug trip, and you have some so-called awakening, and then what? Right? Then what? Does it really awaken you? Or, a day or two later, are you just back to the same self that can't figure things out and then needs to use drugs to try to change something? So I'm also coming from a place with someone who, 25 years ago, started working in group homes with teens, adolescent females, all who'd been physically, sexually, emotionally abused, and most of them introduced to drugs very early. And so for the last 25 years, I've worked in and around recovery environments, addiction. We've hosted programs for 10, 12 years at Temple. I've worked with heroin addicts on a daily basis. I've seen way too many people die from drugs. And much of it starts at a very young age when they think, well, I'm just going to smoke, and then I'm going to take some tabs, and then next thing I know, I'm shooting heroin. So I'm just personally, I've watched too many lives lost, and I've seen too many families destroyed from drug use. So from that personal lens as well, I'm definitely not a fan of this idea that if we, do a bunch of drugs, that we're going to get rid of the ego. So I appreciate the question. It's something I always like talking about. Again, like Tom's question, these are much better in dialogue when it's not just a question and then a response. But those are my thoughts on that. So, and like all the precepts, I think it's a healthier thing as you begin to practice to recognize what the Buddha taught. And then there's our ability to be honest with that. Instead of trying to change what we think the Buddha said or should say, because we are unable to do something, right? So if we have a problem lying, then just recognize that the Buddha taught that lying causes suffering, and we still lie. If we steal, then recognize that the Buddha taught stealing causes suffering, and we still steal. We don't typically, and this, again, from leading this topic and talks on this for many years, the one precept that people try to justify the most is the intoxicants. I don't hear too many people trying to justify lying, killing, and stealing, or even sexual misconduct, especially not sexual misconduct. Most people don't try to justify those things. We just recognize that they cause harm. But when it comes to intoxicants, often people want to justify why that one, in their minds, is okay. And we're welcome to justify anything we want, and we're welcome to try to tell ourselves everything is okay. But then I fall back on the reality that I think the Buddha was brilliant and is a heck of a lot wiser than I am. So, all right. Again, Molly, thank you for the question. I know it's not an easy one to ask and bring up, so I definitely appreciate you for bringing that up. I never mean any offense or to attack people's comments or questions, but I just speak very candidly on my thoughts on those topics. Tom, exactly. Yeah, you go back to work on Monday. So, it's just every day. When you hit the gong 3 times, is that related to the triple gem? Yes, that is the triple gem. Absolutely. So, all right, I think I'll close on that. So we'll go ahead and we'll join palms as we close and do a transfer of merit. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Yuvath, Michael, Yin, and his family and friends who suffer at this time, and to Brian and Linda during their time of suffering and their loss. May they all be at peace and free from suffering. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So, few quick announcements before y'all jump off. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up the temple 14 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks or nuns or gurus or masters. We're not teachers. We're not looking for students. We're just practitioners doing our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that make sense, hopefully. So every night we have different classes going on, different people lead. Our Monday through Friday morning schedule 8 a.m. is happening. Our recovery groups, as I alluded to earlier, our college group, our team group, family group, there's always something happening. Everything is online. We closed 13 months ago. And again, hoping we can open up somewhat soon, but we're still very cautious and conservative on that front. So there are no plans to reopen yet. But as I've shared a few times, I think through social media, I do like feeling that we're getting closer to opening. But we still are following guidelines which do not allow us to open in the capacity that we want to open, meaning we don't want to screen and allow just 50% of the people in the doors that show up. So we're going to hold off still and be very cautious and conservative. If we've waited 13 months, we can wait a little bit longer. So it's a great practice of patience. And the book study, Pristine Mind, will be on hold for a little bit, but we are still continuing the Zen Seeds Monday nights at 7. If you need the book, Buddha for You, which has also been closed, is open with the online store. You can get it there. And then 2 new programs to announce, which have one kicked off the Homeless Hats Project every Sunday, 3 o'clock. You don't need to have any skills in knitting or crocheting. Just show up via Zoom. And we're making hats, beanies to pass out on the streets of San Diego. And then the other new one that will begin this Sunday night, tomorrow night, it's a Tonglen practice. It's a Tibetan Buddhist meditation of sending and receiving. The website now, if you go to the website, there's under programs, you'll see Tonglen meditation. And so if you have anyone who's been ill or sick and you want to send a merit and a dedication and compassion to them, that's what the practice is for. So it'll take you about 30 seconds to fill out. You can stay anonymous. You can just put their name in there if you want, any details or their initials. And then Amy and Kayla and Jose are leading that group Sunday nights, and they will do a dedication and send compassion to those individuals. So thank you all for being here. Be safe, be well, and we will see you soon.